Welcome, coaches, to the IFCA Journal podcast. I am your host, PJ Hedrington. I would like to welcome the man, the myth, the legend, Jerry Chizek from the Iowa High School Association, and he's our special guest because this is really the first time I've had like a big wig on my podcast. I mean that's all little wigs, so
You
he's
gotta aim
rolling it.
higher than if I'm the big wig, you gotta aim higher than that. So, there's a lot more important people in football, especially high school football, than just me. So,
Oh, I know. I
it's
coaches,
not a
I had
higher
to
goal.
right, yes. Hey, coaches, I had to kiss up just a little bit, man. Have a little fun with it. Everybody's too serious all the time. But anyway, I do get the honor to talk to someone who I appreciate and I've gotten to know and again, him and I were talking before the podcast and just getting to know him a little more because I truly believe that just sending a guy a text message or just sending a guy an email, you're really not building a relationship with that person. And again, we're in it, the same business for caring about kids and promoting our sport. So again, just making sure that we reach out to people in our business, in our profession, and build more relationship because they're all people and they all have the same most people have the same heart and same guidelines and direction that we all have together. So, but here's his bio. Hopefully I don't screw this up. He is a Manson Northwest. Right? Am I saying it right?
Manson Northwest Webster.
Manson Northwest Webster. Now, the only person that I ever known to come out of there is Jeff Anlacher, and that's my fishing buddy. So that's the guy. But he played for Coach his senior year. He has a lot of positive things to say about him. Jared also went up to after graduating from Manson. He went to Iowa Central for 2 years. He was a student assistant coach underneath Hall of Fame coaches. Oh man, the Twaits, Clarks, I mean, there's great staff there that the last few years are there, even recently as well. He also transferred to Iowa State, where he was during that time at Iowa State, he was an assistant at Nevada. And that's his claim to fame there. And so we talked about that. He was pretty excited. They won a state title this year, which was kind of cool in the dome. So that was
The
good.
Cubs have gone a long way since the 2007 team that I was a part of, and I said, "I love the guys I worked with, I love the kids we coached."
Yep.
We were a long way from a state championship or a dome appearance, so it was odd seeing the Cubs in the Unidome this
Yeah.
year. Congratulations to Andy for
Yeah.
doing that, but, a long time
Yeah.
coming for Nevada.
Yeah, and Eddie's a good dude too, so it's a good dude, good community. So, but like many communities, sometimes you got to chop wood to get to where you need to go. So that's good. And then he interned at the Iowa Athletic Association. You've been there ever since. Just, I mean, Jesus, working underneath with Bud Legg and Rick and Tharp and just all those coaches, Louis, just all a lot of legends, a lot of good people, a lot of good dudes. So that's kind of cool there. His wife is Jamie. He's been married 8 years, and coaches, we like to welcome him into our fraternity of being a father. He's Jesus. How long has it been? How many days, weeks?
So Bo is just about 6.5 weeks old now. He came 4 weeks early, and, like I said, speaking to my wife, like I said, Jamie tags along on Friday nights when we go out and watch games and watch officials, so we're, you know, hoping that the in-laws can, babysit for us here in Boone during the fall so we can continue to have date nights so we can go out and continue to evaluate. Bo doesn't know how much fun he's gonna have here in a few years when we go, it doesn't matter, the corners of the state we end up at on a Friday
Yeah,
night to watch the guys in stripes give
yeah,
their
that's
effort.
good. That's good. Well, hey, congratulations, Jared. Again, it's a blessing to be a dad and just to see the positive things that you've done in your life and take those on to your kid. It's the best thing in the world. I don't care what anyone else says to you. That's the best thing. So, coaches, we're going to get started tonight. And a couple things before we begin. I just want to remind you this is the second to last podcast. We'll have another podcast and maybe a special guest as well. With that, before we kick off the summer where everyone's doing their 7-on-7 and all the weight room stuff and camps and all that stuff. So, we'll have one more podcast after this one. This is kind of my finale, boom, fireworks kind of deal. And so I'm excited. You ready to rock?
Let's rock, PJ.
All right. Okay, here we go. What is your story background? Now, I know I kind of said the Manson, but you can kind of get in depth and explain a little bit more to us.
Like I said, I was in Manson, like I said, there my whole life, and I was fortunate enough to have plenty of great high school coaches along the way. Like I said, Jeff Barker was my high school head varsity football coach for 3 years. Like I said, he ended up taking an assistant job at Winterset, and Coach Anlicker stepped in as our DC. Uh, to become our head coach my senior year. It's odd in this role as it with at the athletic association, being on this side of things, just with the people that you had in the past that were part of your life. I mean, there were 2 assistant football coaches at Manson and Kevin Wood and Ben Petty, who are now superintendents in our state, who've actually been part of the athletic association rep council. So it's
Yeah,
from that standpoint of they were coach, but now uh, they're at our meetings and I'm giving the report still like I was a student back in Mr. Petty's biology class back as in 2003. But he's
yeah,
he's a soup and Kevin's a soup and that was the weird part of realizing that was the, "Oh, wow, I'm growing up" part, but like I said, they're no longer my coaches, they're peers, they're again, they're soups. Um,
yeah,
I was very fortunate, though, at Manson, to work with a great athletic director and Mike Jepson, former head coach at Manson and was a longtime assistant at BV and then Iowa Central under Kevin Twait. Mike knew my interest in sports, he knew my interest in football, and, he was the one that got me to Iowa Central to be a student assistant to learn from some of the
yeah,
best.
yeah,
Um, like I said, I had an older half brother that graduated from Emmitsburg, so I was familiar with the Twait name, with Dwayne. This is not a knock on my alma mater, but we didn't win a lot of football games, so it was fun going to Emmitsburg to watch them win on Friday nights, to watch my older
right,
brother play because, again, they were used to winning. And back in the day when that was a district with Emmitsburg and West Line, and West Line was just starting to get the roll going with Vanden Bosch and Notches and that group of kids, now men, but it's kind of fun when you were a little kid seeing this kid was committed to go to Nebraska, and this is a big deal because that was
yeah,
Tom Osborne's Nebraska kicking the snot out of my Cyclones.
yeah, yeah,
But, that's the fun part. So having an opportunity, like I said, Mike directed me there to Iowa Central, and I have to have the ability to work with him, and Dwayne on learning the tools of, at that point, how to build a great offensive line. And I know, techniques have changed since then and schemes have changed since then, uh, but they were great people to work with, and they cared
yeah,
about kids, but they were out there grinding. Even, Dwayne had retired from football in '02 or a high school game and was making the trip down from Emmitsburg to Fort Dodge to coach with his son. Like I said, I owe a lot to Mike Jepson because again, he looked out for me. Um, and he opened a lot of doors, and I was very appreciative with that. And like I said, joked about my time with the Cubs, but after Iowa Central transferred to finalize my degree here at Iowa State, and had an opportunity to work with John Pilcher, now an offensive line coach at Grandview. Had an opportunity, like I said, John's dad was the athletic director at Iowa Central, so that was the tie to be part of the Nevada football program.
mhm,
Again, we struggled on the field. We did have some fun though with our kids and with the coaching staff. Again, there's coaches out there. There are years that do not go your way. And as I was joking beforehand, I said our last touchdown of the year, we were ecstatic that we finally scored. It had been a couple weeks, and didn't matter that when we reviewed the film that we had 12 on the field. The guys in stripes missed it. We blocked that punt, but heck, we scored. We still lost by 50. The clock was still running, but hey, we still had a positive experience of hey, we blocked a
yeah,
punt. We got rid of the goose egg, and like I said, that was the last time I was on the football field as a coach.
yeah.
Again, we started as an intern here in the summer of '08, and they've never gotten rid of me. Was
And
intern
that's
slash
good.
part time for 4 years, and now have transitioned, like I said, from simply just being the assistant to everybody to again get my hands on a lot of different experiences, different sports. Starting with the sport of swimming, and doing swimming, cross country, track and field, picking up baseball along the way, and now picking up football is a great challenge that I have, and a lot of respect for the coaches listening out there right now.
Yeah, good. Well, we thank you for what you do. All right, man, you've just breezed by my first two questions, so I'm gonna go ahead and hit you with this one. This one's a good one. Can you tell us a little bit about your partner, Jamie, your wife? Tell us a little bit about Jamie.
So, like I said, I'm blessed to have Jamie in my life. Coaches, you need a supportive spouse during football season. With our job here at the Athletic Association, different times of the year with tournament time, she can be a widow at times as well too. I joke, but I said, but during football season, she tags along with me. On Friday nights, she's worked out with her boss that she makes up time earlier in the week. So if we need to leave and go a little
That's
bit
awesome.
further, that she can hop on and hop in. If we're leaving at 3 o'clock, well, let's go. And the joke is it cost me a bag of popcorn, a thing of M&Ms, and if there's a Godfather's pizza along the way, that's the trifecta for the night. If there's no Godfathers, we find out what we can at the concession stand, but that's the big 3, and
Yeah, yeah.
our new recently, like I said, we've just completed year 3 of our or year 2, excuse me, of our, training tapes with our officiating that we have on our website to try to create some consistency across the year. Like I said, my wife jokes that she is becoming a great football official watching those training tapes and going out Friday nights with our evaluation list. I
Let's
don't see
go,
her playing
Jamie.
Saturday
Yeah.
anytime soon, but again, well, it's been our time. Like I said, I joke with our needing our in-laws here in town to help babysit during the fall so she can continue that tradition of doesn't matter, like I said, any officiating crews are listening to this as well too. Doesn't matter where you're working, you might find us. Last year we went from, we were at week 1, we were at Arweva, and we've
Wow.
gone, it's like, so we've gone 8-player, we've gone 5A. It just depends where the crews are working that we need to see. Like I said,
Far you go? How far do you go? I gotta ask. How far do you go? Do you go all the way like across the state? How far do you
so
drive? I gotta ask.
we've got we've got 10 guys across the state that are former officials, former uh, state championship semifinal officials that help us out. My range is 2 and a I approximately go 2 to 2.5 hours is about as far as I can make it because we've got people in
Okay.
the corners that can help us out,
Okay.
with that.
Okay.
And so, like, our board gives me a hard time, it doesn't matter. Every game Friday night is important to somebody. While it may not be a sexy matchup of why you're going to that game, well, there are five dudes assigned to that game, and to those 2 teams, it's the most important game on a Friday night. So, it might be Valley Dowling, and that's the game getting all the publicity here in our state, or at least in central Iowa. But you head out west, like you said, that Boyer Valley Arweva game week 1 last year, it was a season opener. Both teams were pumped, like you said, to
Yeah.
them, that was everything, and that's what
Yeah.
was great about that.
Yep, it is, and and that's the focus I think people lose, right, Jared? They lose the fact that okay, if it's truly about the kids and it's about all the things that come with the kids, the camaraderie, the community, all the things, and so I think people forget that. All right, last question here, brother. All right, what is your favorite hobby or pastime? Favorite hobby or pastime?
That's a tough one, PJ, because I don't have much of a life outside of work. I'm a terrible golfer. I'm a terrible golfer. Like I said, everything like I said, we talked about my wife. She knows I'm a sports nut. I mean, my pastime, like I said, it's anything Iowa State. We've got football
Okay,
tickets, and like I said, for those who have IFCA, IFCA members that have used the free tickets at Jack Trice, you know that our season tickets are 10 rows above the comp seats that you get as a member of the IFCA, which is great because I can see a handful of coaches on Saturday to shoot the breeze with after a game on Friday night. We've got that. We've got our basketball tickets in the cheap seats in Hilton. Uh, and as much as I love football, I love Cyclone basketball, and it helps that we've had that rolling. But again, that's my pastime is Cyclone athletics. Which again, how boring is that for a guy that works with sports 40 hours a week and then can't get enough sports over it during the week that he's got to go home and grab more of it.
now does Jamie go to the games? Does she
Oh
she
yeah,
like okay, all
yeah.
right, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. I like that. That's cool. Well, and I can't wait to see Bo and his little cyclone stuff and hanging out too. That's gonna be awesome.
It's gonna like you said, we're hoping Bo, like you said, as we joked that we've never heard of a Bo that's not tough, and we're hoping that's true. And I'm hoping, like you said, after I share with our family what we had named him, my brother who's currently a coach in our state, he just had to, I'm not saying he ruined the moment by sending the faux Pelini picture with Bo pet with the cat, but
That
I'm
is
like,
awesome.
that was welcome to the family. So at some point, our son will appreciate the humor.
His name is Chizek too, right? Coach Chizek, is
Yep,
that his name too? Okay, Coach
yep.
Chizek, I don't know where if you're listening to this, that was the Hall of Fame type of thing that you did for your little brother. That's awesome, buddy. That is amazing. Good job, pal.
So you're gonna have a little fun.
I don't drink beer, but I will buy you a beer when I see you, Coach Chiswick, wherever you're at, buddy. Good job. All right, man. Coaches, I think we're ready for this. Okay. I'm sure some of you have got your notepads out for this. And again, like I said, this is where we get to the meat and potatoes. Jared's going to kind of, like I said, he's going to go into some of the questions we've got. I also would like to thank our IFCA board that came up with some of these questions. We got some coaches' questions as well. But thank you guys for coming up with this. This is really a team effort with the IFCA Journal, so it's really a family affair. So we do a good job with that. All right, Jared, you ready, my man?
Let's go.
All right. Before I get into the ones that we have written down, I want to talk about the hot topics. There's usually about 2 hot topics every year that people talk about, whether it's at our board meeting, whether it's people get text messages or image messages, whatever it is. It's the legal recruiting of student athletes and then the coach athlete contact time. Those are the biggest topics across our state that we get. I mean, it's the biggest headache. And I know you guys are doing your due diligence. I know the IFCA as coaches, we're trying to police it as well. And again, that's a podcast for another day. But I kind of want to just get into just like how do we handle it? Like how do we what do we what's our thoughts?
Like I said, PJ, the biggest thing, and as I've shared with the IFCA board in the past, and like I said, within our handbook, like I said, that's our general handbook, not just our football manual, talks about uh, if there's a rule, like I said, if it's undue influence of trying to get a student to another school, if it's somebody that's not following coach athlete contact as prescribed by Iowa code or through our board of control policy with shoulder pads not or being worn when they're not supposed to. We need evidence. A hearsay is not going to be enough. We need evidence. If a student is telling you something as a coach, we need documentation from that student. If you've got photos, we would need that. The biggest thing that we get right now is while we get evidence, we also need, as part of the, again, part of the process to our executive director, Tom Keating, talks about it needs to be a complaint with a name. We have anonymous policy or anonymous correspondence, and then we also have the formal complaint. And many coaches prefer, and schools prefer to go the anonymous route, which we do share then the evidence that has been shared with us to the school, but it talks about then that procedure is in our handbook saying we share it. It's the due diligence of that school to investigate, but then we're out of it unless they self-report. Again, a founded case or not necessarily founded case, but a more formal complaint with that goes through our executive director talks about here's evidence, here's the name. Because again, if you're going to accuse a member school of an allegation, they have the right to know who's making that accusation. So that's part of it. And again, we understand the frustration that's out there because again, I get plenty of calls in the summer or shortly after the season ends when we talk about the movement of players, especially with transfer rules that continue to change from the Department of Ed. From that standpoint of what is being done, those are people that reach out or email me. Those are the options I give. And
Right.
ultimately, it's
Right.
up how more importantly, it's how that school district wants to handle it going forward. They want to say, we joked about Manson earlier. Do we want Manson, Northwest Webster, to be the one that says to Pocahontas area, we're calling you out for this? Because ultimately, that's what it's going to take is that football coach slash
Right.
athletic
Yeah.
administrator to say, this is what we've got. We want it to address, and then we can go through the procedure that way. But usually, like I said, the hang up there is the school not willing to put their name to it for whatever reason. And I'm not going to speculate why it is
Right. Yeah.
because
Yeah. Yeah.
we've gotten the gamut all over the place when we've talked to people saying, there's some stuff here, but we also would you put your name? No, it's not that big of a deal, or we're not going to play that school, or it's a conference school, or
Right.
for
Right.
whatever
Right.
reason. And that's
Right. Yeah.
then that's but again, just understand this is what we've got. Is the procedures in our handbook and how it's supposed to be handled.
Right. Yeah. And the thing across the state, I mean, this has been an ongoing problem forever. I mean, one of the biggest issues, two of the biggest issues that's across our state. And I get the part where you tie your name to it. I mean, like we talked about before this, I got a text message from a coach, "Hey, this is going on. Do you know this?" And so, and when you tell someone, "Hey, okay, contact whoever you need to contact, make sure tie your name to it," then that changes it for some people. You know what I mean? It's like the importance. Well, is it important or not important? You know what I mean? And so that's the hard part that I think that gray area we always talk about. And so I think that's kind of weird. So well, again, we can go into that for like a 2-day podcast, but I appreciate you just kind of touching on that so much. I really do. Because I know that's what a lot of our coaches across the state, that's one of the big headaches that we face. All right. All right, here we go. Number one that we got. As the summer approaches, what can coaches do and not do during summer with their players and football team?
So again, starting June 1, the coach athlete contact rule is now wide open for you to work with your kids, with the exception of the 8 days of the dead week period following state baseball from Sunday to Sunday. During that time frame, again, you can work with your athletes. Those football specific drill or workouts are not to be in conflict with baseball practice or games. Understand, like I said, that's the part that some people do forget that technically by the how the Iowa code is written, it's not supposed to conflict with the sport in season, which would be baseball. But again, you can work with your kids. Your kids can wear helmets. That's the only piece of equipment that they technically can wear on campus, with it being a school-sponsored activity. But we know, like I said, there'll be a lot of 7-on-7s. There'll be some skills and drills with certain position groups. You can use equipment such as dummies out there, fire hose, whatever you need to do to get your kids lined up or for an aiming point. Also, when you come to team camps off-site, that's an easy one. Like I said, I know that Central and Simpson, just to name a couple, have traditionally run their team camp. The team camp is technically run by the university or by those colleges, so it's not a school-specific activity. It's not sponsored by the head coach or school personnel. We've seen an increase in satellite camps across our state with some D3 schools, NAIA schools reaching out to different parts just to have 3 or 4 schools get together for a padded team camp. That's allowed because, again, it's not sponsored by the school or that head coach. But again, if it's simply just the PJ Hedrington workout, helmets is
You
what
can't do it.
it's helmets only. Now, if you bring in an outside group, an outside university, college organization to run it, then things change. But if they're affiliated with your school or affiliated with your program in any way, you are simply just in helmets. But again, the big thing then is we've got our 8 days of dead time from Sunday to Sunday following state baseball, and that is completely hands off. No weight room, no drills, you name it. Let your kids be kids that week. Coaches, enjoy your 8 days before coming back on August 3rd with many of you starting camp. Or this year, we're at 20 plus week 0 games, knowing that things get real on that Monday, August 3rd. But more importantly, like I said, if at any point during the summer you have a question on some of the stuff you're doing on, or if you'd like to try to enhance it, feel free to reach out to make sure that, hey, is this within the current guidelines of summer workouts with coach athlete contact and also with the equipment. And final one thing, again, one complaint that we also, or one concern, I shouldn't say complaint, but one concern that we also receive often about the summer is, again, anything that you put on is supposed to be voluntary because you are technically not in season. So it is a voluntary workout. So if someone were to miss it for whatever reason, you are not to hold that against the athlete going forward prior to, again, August 3rd for those schools playing week 0 or August 10th for everybody that starts week 1.
Okay. All right. Good. 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 Look at you. You're just a pro at this podcasting stuff. I may be out of a job. I may be out of a job, brother.
Yeah, you can keep the job, TJ. Maybe we can trade jobs when it comes to week 9 the play or week 9 of the regular season, and we're trying to figure out playoff bearings. You can take my job, and I'll take your job that week. Try to make everybody happy that week.
I am no, thank you. All right, here's the next one. Here we go. As a result of the legislation, schools can now share co-op with 25% of the enrollment of the smaller school counting towards the program's total enrollment. Has the IHSAA seen any impact from this change?
So I know that a year ago, this got a lot of people excited. It got us excited in our office because we found out about it just a couple days before the legislature had actually concluded for adjourned for the year. But more importantly, last year we just issued football districts and it issued or published schedules, and literally 2 weeks later, we're in the process of are we blowing this whole thing up, and I got to go back to square one
Right.
with this new classification model. Again, in the sport of football, it's not been implemented yet as part of the bill. It goes into play for football games in the season following August 1st of 27. So when we redistrict next winter, we will add the 25% factor with the sharing agreement. Again, people get excited about it. So, why did it come into play? Again, our executive director has been active at the legislature, working with them the last couple of years. When they reach out with an issue, Tom can help give perspective, history, why maybe things are the way they are. In this particular case, it was the idea that a school being told that they cannot find a sharing partner because they would bump everybody around them up in class. We've had that in a couple of cases that a school could be particularly stuck in that case that no one would want them because of that. And so this idea that came from the legislature was, okay, if we go to 25%, you should be able to find a sharing partner somewhere. So that's a little history or maybe the reason why we can agree to disagree on that thought process. But that's a little reason of where we got to where we're at right now with the 25%.
Do
I
we
can
have a
say,
lot of that happening? Do we have a lot of that happening across the state?
saying the no, we're not going to take it
Yeah.
because you're bumped up.
Yeah. Yeah.
We do, and it's a unique thing because we have football over here, and I'm not trying to say football is special, but it is special from a standpoint that every game matters in terms of the postseason,
Right.
and that your
Right.
schedule is coming from our office. Nothing like your basketball schedule, your conference dictates, or your athletic director finds those additional and non-conference games, and that you're only in that class for the postseason. Well, for football, you're in that class for at least your district part, so at least for 5 weeks of the season, if not 6 or 7
Right.
weeks, depending what class you're in.
Right.
Well, there were a handful of situations out there that people would have to drive through multiple districts to get to a sharing partner for
Wow.
whatever reason. So that's the reason why, or at least part of the reason why this is where it's at. So had we had the 25%, was I talk about scrambling last May when this
Mhm.
all came down,
Right.
we would have had 5 schools gone up and 5 schools gone down with the factor of 25%. So what's that look like going forward? Not a clue. I would anticipate that those 5 schools would be probably down in class again. But again, enrollment changes in our state. We just published the beds doc here for the 26-27 school year for those sports, again, non-football, since we're in year 2 of a cycle. We can see that enrollment has decreased across our state for nearly everybody.
Mhm.
So that's
Mhm.
also going to play into, it'll be interesting when we actually put the numbers to it next December, next January to see where we're at, where some of the cutoff is, where it's at. Now, how we seen it, I can tell you in the sport of wrestling, there was a lot of schools that impact from an impact standpoint of there's a lot of schools that share. Just from a frame of reference, in football, we had 330 schools play football last year, or 330 schools given a schedule in our state. In wrestling, there are 279 wrestling schools. So we've got 50 fewer schools. So those schools that don't offer their own program share.
Mhm.
Andy Umpton, our wrestling coordinator, would say that there was a handful of schools with the sharing agreement that were no longer 3A, they're now 2A, or if they were 2A, they were 1A, and it just changed the map. And that's good, bad, or indifferent. There was a one or two, I'm not even saying traditional powers, but stronger programs that dropped. That's what we've seen. Wrestling's the biggest example because that's the sport that we've seen the most in.
Right.
Basketball, there's not many co-ops. Track, there's not many co-ops. But Tyler's not anticipating many co-ops this year in baseball. But football will be interesting because, again, we have the most classes in any sport that we have with 7. But we have the enrollment cap with 8-player football, and that's gonna be, not necessarily an added challenge, but some of the unknown out there for a lot of people of how does this 25% impact? I mean, in theory, could we have 2 8-player schools potentially share and still be eligible for 8-player? Yeah, there's a couple scenarios out there,
Wow.
given
Yeah.
the 25%, given where their enrollments are already small enough to begin with that 25% of 50 is only 12 and a half. They'll be
Right.
that's not a large addition regardless if they're trying to find an 8-player program or an A, or 1A. It does appear, and I'm anticipating it's gonna be 8-player A and 1A are gonna be uh, where we're gonna see some maybe uniquenesses with this, just given the size of the schools and also with the gap within those 3 classes. But
Right.
again, it's all hypotheticals at this point until we actually see the impact, when we redistrict here after the 26 football season.
Okay. One of the questions is, this seems one of the questions from coaches. It seems like a flawed system that does. How do you fix it? Because it just seems to undermine what like it goes against what we do. So how do we fix that to make it work for us? Eh, Go ahead.
So the hard part, like I said, with it being passed by the legislature, it would now take their action to change it.
Right.
And I know
Okay.
there have been some schools that have reached out saying we need to fix this. Well, what's our proposal? What's the brainstorming idea to resolve it? Because again, we can show that we've not gotten the concern of I can't find a sharing partner. We've had more people saying I'm willing to share now because it's clearly not going to impact uh, for the time being. And if we again, the uniqueness again with football was everything being driven, not everybody making the postseason. That's going to be the uniqueness with this. Because on the other side, if you're talking basketball wise, I'm in that class potentially for 1 week, for one game. I'm 5 and 16. I get still 2A, I'm out. But also as part of the sharing agreement, you're also allowing kids from another school to play that maybe didn't have enough kids in their own program
Right.
to play as well
Right.
too. And that's the uniqueness too of with the sharing agreements with Iowa.
Right.
Not because not every state allows sharing agreements. So we've had that a long time. That was prior to the 25% that we've allowed uh, shares, and that goes back to the 80s. Because again, we can talk, traditional powers. Central Line George Little Rock is one that comes to mind of they've been a long time share of football, and they've had a lot of success with it. And I know there's a lot of people in Northwest Iowa wondering, are they going to be 1A or 2A next year, depending on this 25% factor. And hypothetically, this year, based on my numbers, I don't. They would still be in 2A, but we'll see what the enrollment
Doesn't Yeah, yeah, yeah.
does here
Well, I'm
a year from now.
Yeah, I'm sitting here as a coach, and this is the part of the coach in me, the coach hat is, man, if I'm an 8-man guy and another team shares with another 8-man program, I mean, that could change the whole dynamic of a program. You know what I mean? I mean, and they get to stay 8-man. That changes everything because especially at the 8-man level, all you need is 2. I mean, you need 3 guys, but if you get 3 extra guys or 4 extra guys, you're Don Bosco.
It's going to, in theory, it
Yeah,
could, depending on where your bed's number's at, it's going
it
to
could.
potentially it's gonna increase numbers for some programs, but it's
Right.
gonna make programs I mean, the intent of the sharing agreement also is to make programs healthier along that standpoint. To
Yeah,
begin
yeah,
with,
it
that we
will.
have numbers and we're not, if it's 8 player and we're out there, excuse me, with 10 kids total with 2 on the sideline, not on the field at that point or,
Yeah,
in Class
yeah,
A, uh, being out there and we're seeing 14 kids and 3 on the sideline with 11 on the field. Uh,
right.
but it's gonna get interesting. Again, I don't wanna get political with this on a lot of other things that have happened, with
Yeah, please
declining
don't.
enrollment.
Please
But again,
don't.
with enrollment and where things are gonna end up with schools and their own programs, and are they gonna be more incentivized to try to look for sharing partners in just
Right,
football, or is it
right.
gonna be more for all sports? Because again,
Correct.
it's just not enrollment, but in participation, but it's also trying to find quality coaches.
All right, here we go. We are moving on. I like this. All right. So, and that's the first time I seen this, and this question's going to be out there, but the first time I seen this, this whole thing, this next part was on Twitter, and then it became a whole deal. So there was a bill introduced this cycle to increase the number of non-contact days. While this bill did not pass through the legislation, what were the primary concerns? So you remember that? Okay, yeah.
Yep, yep. There was a proposed like you said, the initial bill laid out that would require a dead week. So we have the dead 8 days of dead week right now that, like I said, we're actually allowed to, issue 14 days of dead time throughout the school year with the Department of Education rules. We only use 8
Hmm.
currently. But this bill would establish a dead week following the week of state football, following the week of state basketball, and then actually extend those 8 days and make it a 10-day dead week following state baseball.
Mm,
We have a student advisory committee that has also weighed in on some of this. Kids are getting burned out. Again, it is an interesting conversation with some of our multi-sport kids going from one season to the next. Again, each state is different. Whatever works in the surrounding states or what they do is different. Our advisory committee meeting, we talked about summer contact and how in Illinois, it was brought up that they get I believe it was 20 or 24 days of all the contact. That's all they get over the summer. For some of our veteran coaches listening right now, you can remember that it was only 10 days of contact in the summer, and schools were responsible for saying, here are the 10 days I'm using for the sport of football. Here are the 10 days I'm using for basketball. There are some states out there that say the first, in June, June is football, July is basketball, or it's
mhm.
flipped from that standpoint.
Right,
But
right.
we do have some kids, and and I'm assuming that somebody got to this individual that brought the bill forward that ultimately did not pass. From a standpoint of it just seems like we're running ragged through for four sports. We are again unique that we are the only state that plays summer baseball. So we talk about dead times and kids were getting a break, whether that be kids, coaches, whatever you'd like to name it. We are going 4 seasons long. We are not like the surrounding states or any place else that whose state baseball championship ends middle of July or middle of June, and they've got 6 weeks with dead weeks brought in built in at that point. Burnout is real. We're hearing that from our SAC kids. Now, what's the solution? I would think at some point this bill will be brought back forward again, or they're going to ask us, the athletic association and the girls' union, to take a look at implementing a few more dead periods throughout the year. And again, just from a standpoint of just let our kids breathe. As coaches, I know you get excited and wanting to work with your kids because maybe it's peer pressure of knowing what that district next to you is doing. But the one thing is, there was some initial pushback on the dead period that was started just a handful of years ago, and now we're being told from coaches, administrators, and families that this is the greatest thing we've
Best
ever
thing.
done.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Because
the
now
best. It's one of the best
you
things.
plan
Yeah.
your vacation and you know that you're not worried about what's happening at the bordering, neighboring district because they're not working with their kids either. You can actually catch your breath with it. So I would anticipate that conversation to continue to where it ultimately lands. I don't know, but again, Mr. Keating knows in our office, like you said, he's tasked us and to continue to look at options of where we could potentially put some dead time in with our calendar to give families and coaches the opportunity to catch their breath between sports seasons.
Okay. So, and the next question we got down here is how do we, as a coach, if we have issues with that bill, how do we voice our concerns?
I say if you have any issues with it, I would recommend reaching out to your own legislature in your area. I mean, again, with 100 reps and 50 senators, as an athletic association, we cannot lobby. So when Tom goes to these committee hearings, he is to listen and answer questions. And while he can indicate potentially through his tone or through the way potentially the way he answers a question what his feelings are, but he cannot officially lobby with that. And that's with our agreement through the DE. So again, if there's issues with anything Iowa code related, it needs to come through locally your grassroots if you're concerned to reach out to your rep or your senator, or again, work through your athletic administration or your school administration if they have an issue with it as well too. But ultimately, that's the way it needs to go because it cannot. So our hands are tied in certain things.
Okay. All right. Okay. So this next one, boy, I tell you what, I had just, Jared, I tell you what, I just heard this about, oh my gosh, 3 or 4 weeks ago that this bill, I guess this bill is passed, and I almost jumped out of my skin. I was like, what is what? So it's kind of different. Okay. All right, coaches, here we go. Another new bill that did pass this session allows eighth graders to compete at the high school athletic level. What is the current status of this bill for the 2020 or 2026-2027 season? And what are some of the concerns and our plans for the guidance for schools?
Well, like I said, so it has passed. It's still
Oof.
awaiting the governor's signature, but there's no, and
Yeah.
we don't believe it will not be signed. Again, Tom has a meeting, like I said, meeting at the department here in the next week or so, uh, as he has his list of questions that need to be part of these emergency rules. As the bill lays out, there are supposed to be emergency rules published by the DE by August 1st. With that to happen, I said I know that he emailed the membership yesterday on when the state board meets here the next couple months, just to make sure that our ADs and our soups and principals are kept in the loop as to when those days are, to pay attention with those potentially when those guidelines and rules will be written. It's going to be an interesting year, regardless, because again, how the bill is written, it says that the athletic association and girls union will allow eighth graders to participate. So we've got some schools out there that will have to make that decision. That just because they're eligible, will they play at the high school level? Can they play at the high school level? Can they play at the junior high level? We've got that question. Because right now, like I said, how the current code is written, talks about interscholastic athletics being 9 through 12. Well, many schools offer a junior high program 7 through 8. So now, if it becomes 8 through 12, what happens to junior high football or junior high sports in general? And
Right.
we've got
Yep.
that question. I don't have an answer for it yet because we're waiting for guidance to see where it
Right.
all ultimately
And
lands
that
on
was one of my
this.
questions next. That was one of my questions. Yeah.
We've got that is, can I move up a handful of 8th graders to play high school and keep the rest down to play junior high? Ideally, this would become a local control issue, but ultimately, we'll see where the guidance lands. We've done it, like I said, football wise, I think everybody understands where we can get a little nervous with it. We're now talking
Yes.
about, in the past, we talked about 14 to 18-year-olds. Now we're talking 13 to 18-year-olds. And what's the body of a 13-year-old potentially look like compared to an 18-year-old on a football field with that?
It's different.
Where
Yeah.
it's different, where like I said, but I can give some props to our coaches out there of, the point of we're not gonna play varsity football with freshmen, and some have held to that. Some have not had that luxury, but some have held, "If the kid is physically not ready, we're not gonna do this. We're not gonna risk it and have that kid be run off because it's a negative experience of getting worked over for 8 or 9 consecutive weeks." I'd like to think that will be the same mindset with 8th graders, that if he's not, how many 8th graders are gonna be be ready for varsity football? I don't think many. That's just my opinion. I'd like to think
That's
our
my
coaches are
opinion
thinking
too.
the same thing.
Yeah.
Now, are there gonna be some 8th graders that could play potentially JV football, some freshman football to help with numbers? Could, maybe, but again,
Depends on the
everyone's gonna be a
level.
little different. It's a
Yeah.
different
Depends
level. I
on the
mean,
level.
it may be more
Yeah.
appropriate, but we're still gonna have those a few 8th graders out there wearing, weighing 85 pounds and from an equipment standpoint, just being a little different than what is at the junior high level. Again, I wish I had more answers for you right now, PJ, but we're in a holding pattern right now to see what these rules ultimately land on, because we're talking, we have lax rules at the junior high. There is no eligibility rules at the junior high level in terms of open enrollment and transfer. There's no sit out. There's no failing, it's all local control when it comes to passing all classes at the 8th grade level. Well, now is that going to be part of it with needing to pass all? Coach athlete contact rules are a lot more loose at the junior high level than the high school level. So now
Wow.
will these kids be part of that? I mean, that's where some of the issues that need to be worked out prior to August 1, and sooner the better, so our coaches and our athletic directors can implement the plan prior to the first day of practice and saying, "Oh crap, we've got to get all these 8th graders here now, or we can keep things status quo for another year. Or we're gonna, for whatever that school district may decide to do." But again, As I tell our, as we've told our schools, stay tuned on that one because we'll have more. Once we have guidance, we can share it. But for the time being, we are awaiting everything to be finalized.
Wow. Like I said, I was shocked when I heard that. Because I thought of I thought of me. I was a little eighth grader, and me going against Tristan Wirth, from Mount Vernon back in the day. No, thank you.
Well, like I said, it's not fun for you. And then why would you want to come back out? That's the
Right. And that's and I just can't believe, and I'm sure some of our coaches across the state are thinking the same thing. Like, the health concern of this whole deal is it's only a matter of time before some eighth grader gets really severely hurt going against a mature 19-year-old that's a Division I kid.
like I said, that's where I hope like some common sense comes into play that this kid's not
Yeah,
ready for. Like I said, are there some sports that we're going to see eighth graders excel? Yes.
sure.
I mean,
Wrestling is a prime example. Wrestling is
wrestling
a
is a
prime I
prime
mean,
example.
yeah, prime example, but football is totally different than
Football
that.
is completely different, and that's where some common sense is going to need to be used. Um,
Right.
Again, to try to place that kid at the appropriate level that he should be participating at.
All right. Man, we're moving along. I know we're at a 46 minutes. I told you, I said, I'm going to try to keep it at 45. I got to get you home to Bo and Jamie. I don't want to get beat up by those guys.
Like I said, but if for those still listening, I'll give them credit if you're still listening to this. We're 47 minutes in.
You know what? Me and you may need to take him out to dinner if any coach is still listening to this besides Marty Wadley. Marty is probably gonna listen to this one from front to back, and Wilkin and those kind of guys, and maybe Paul Patterson. But yeah, I don't know. It's a lot of information and a lot of just kind of like dry stuff, and so it's kind of new for me. But
Well, I
it's
figured
cool.
maybe
I like it.
maybe Marty and Drew can listen to it together next week at the state qualifying track meet. So maybe they can do that during the 30-minute break. But now we're over 30 minutes. So guys, I'm sorry that we ran a little long. So you'd have to interfere with the shuttle
Yeah.
hurdle at this point.
Oh, I know, right? They're all excited for it. Okay, we got two more questions left. We'll pick one, okay? We'll do one. All right, because I want to eat dinner too. All right. What has been your focus since becoming a football administrator at the Athletic Association to help improve and grow the game of football for Iowa high school?
From a standpoint, like I said, I was excited when Mr. Keating gave me the opportunity to become the football administrator here with the Athletic Association. I had done a lot of behind the scenes work with Todd Tharp, our previous administrator, for the sport. So I was excited to take the lead and become the man when it came to that. I think the most important thing with growing the game or trying to improve the game in our state is getting input from our stakeholders. It's attending the IHSAA board meetings quarterly, like I've done, and I've appreciated the invites to be part of that. We've made it a priority in our office to try to improve officiating. Are we perfect? No, we're not perfect, but we're making an attempt to get better. We've partnered with Monty Tilsner, an official at Northwest Iowa, who's a Big Ten deep wing, who helps, weekly puts together training tapes, ranging from 15 to 25 minutes on here are plays from the previous week on so here are some great calls. Here are some calls that, unfortunately we missed maybe because we were out of position. But from that standpoint, so we're trying to be vocal, trying to be out in front of some things, trying to show coaches as here's an additional tool on how to treat your kids, on how to teach your kids on proper technique on here's how our officials are going to call it. Coaches be aware of this. So again, we need more coaches to be watching those videos, but we do enjoy the phone call we get from an official on Friday night that says the coach said he watched on the training tape and I don't know what you were talking about. Well, thanks for just tells me that you weren't listening. I don't write those memos for fun on Thursday, so I do appreciate it when someone does at least quote the memo or watches the training tape to say that I actually know that someone's paying it, that someone is actually using the resources that were out there.
Right,
Like I said,
right.
with our student advisory committee that we've had now for the last handful of years, it's great bouncing ideas off of those kids. While they represent multiple sports, we do have football represented on there with a handful of kids. So you talk about the season of what's going on, where are they seeing, what are they doing, what's their relationship with their coach. What you talk about summer activities, what's that summer look like at their, a 5A school compared to an 8-player school compared to, a 2A, 3A school. So getting some ideas that way. But again, it's trying to be out in front of some things, but it's also about building these relationships. As we joked earlier, I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to, for some of you, this is the first time that you've seen my face. Well, that's fine. But don't be a stranger when I come down to the clinic at Prairie Meadows and I'm there that at 7:15, the best time, 7:15 Saturday morning because no one has a good time Friday night. Don't be afraid to come up and Don't be afraid to come up, just even introduce yourself, or if you have a question, or pick up the phone or shoot me an email. Yes, I understand. We joked earlier about playoff night switching jobs, PJ and I switching jobs. Yeah, we fully understand when we get to schedule release or district release or playoff night that not everyone's going to be happy in this state. But I'd like to think that we've built a relationship from a standpoint of here's the process. When you're all mapping your potential pairings out on that Friday night, you have an idea of like, okay, it's pretty clear cut in the manual how they have to handle certain things. This is how they're going to do it, and how close are we to the mindset of the administrative staff, the athletic association? But really, it's just trying to again build those relationships, understand that we have coaches' perspectives, we have officials' perspectives, we have school administrator perspectives, and that's part of the fun too on Friday nights when we go out and evaluate crews is having that conversation if we can. And some ADs are coaches, some ADs are running a concession stand, but just even quick saying hello and from that standpoint to see how things are from the boots on the ground perspective of again from all three of how the season has gone or how the school year has gone and of where we can potentially improve. And that's the beauty of our sport. Like I said, given the time frame of football, we start the school year. We're in the middle of the season when we do our district AD meetings. We've worked well. Our office has with the leadership of the IHSAA on some of the Football Coaches Association district meetings on some topics that, at least from our office's standpoint, that we're seeing as potential issues or coming down the pipe that we need to address sooner than later. So we can get some input that way prior to the advisory committee meeting. And again, do we agree on everything? No, we don't. There are some ideas that we can still vet and ultimately get through at some point with it. But if there's ideas to fix something, let's try to address it. There are some things that I'm not saying are unfixable, because that's a bad way of thinking of it. But there are some things that are a lot more challenging to fix right now than other items. And that's just the reality of it doesn't matter what sport we're in, but across the state when working with 330 football schools, again, with roster sizes from 10 to 120. Everyone's got different needs, everyone's got different problems, everyone's got different desires. I mean, again, the hard reality is 50% of our schools will win every Friday night, 50% will not. And how do we respond after, regardless of what happens on a Friday night, to keep those kids involved and given a positive experience? Again, with all three facets of coaches, administrators, officials, trying to give those best experiences for those 4 or soon to be 5 years of high school football playing experience. Because again, not everybody gets that opportunity after their senior year to play. Some end up as a student assistant football coach. Others end up becoming a great fan sitting in a student section at a Big 10 or Big 12 school and having fun that way.
Yeah, that's good. Good, good, good. All right, good answer. And coaches, as we wrap this up again, we've got a goofy question at the end, and Jared will give us his email and all those things. But there's one thing, that again, listening to him talk and being a part of the association for so long and listening to the old guard of coaches that come through, I'm going to encourage us all to continue to build that relationship with your own AD, with your Jared, with the association. Continue to send your emails, questions to these guys, but not only just be a good problem pointer outer, but come up with a solution as well, because as we all know in life, it's about relationships, but it's also about, okay, we see the problem, how do we solve the problem together? Okay, and we're all in this together, and it's just the kind of the way it is. And sometimes you may not like how things are done or how they're handled, but again, if you're truly in it about the kids and you're invested in the kids, then it should be that way all the time. It should not ever be a question of who you are. All right, Jared, here we go. Okay, funny, goofy question, and then I'm gonna get your email. Okay, goofy
Yep,
question. You ready for this one? This is
go for it.
crazy. Okay, you were a lineman back in the day, correct?
Yep.
All right. Were you the lineman? If Bo came to you and he wanted to be a lineman, would you A, tell him to be a lineman with a neck roll so he can be a kicker, or B, would you tell him to be a lineman with no neck roll and still be a kicker?
Well, I had the neck roll because by God, you look better than you actually were. Yeah. I would say now, I would pass on the neck roll. Ultimately, I'll let him make that decision with it. But no, like you
Oh,
said, yeah, I had the neck roll back in the day. I was just too bad I couldn't be a linebacker, so I couldn't have the cowboy collar or anything along those lines.
man, it was boy, those were good old days, good old days. All right, Jared, what's a good email for you? Spell it out for our coaches, please.
So my email, like I said, if I'm assuming PJ, they can see my name on the screen, correct?
No, this is all audio, so this will all be audio.
Okay, got it. So we scratched that. So like I said, my email here at the office is the letter J, then my last name, CHIZEK at IAHSAA.org. If you do have a question, please reach out. Like I said, that's the most important thing because we can, if I don't know what the issues are out there across the state, then find out, I can't help come up with a solution with it. But again, whether that be something over the summer, whether that be a playing rule question, like I said, because August 3rd is when you'll be able to listen to my wonderful voice for an hour or so with the rules meeting when it goes live. If there's any questions along those lines, but seriously, with playing rules, eligibility, like I said, hopefully your eligibility, you're working with your athletic director on that one. But again, feel free to reach out. If I'm not the guy with the correct answer, if it's more than just football and I need to get a couple more guys in our office, their opinions on it, I will. But if it's football related, I should be able to get back to you quickly. Again, feel free to reach out. Do not believe that I'm an intimidating guy from a standpoint that I'm not going to pick up the phone or respond to the email because I will, and that's because that's what I'm here for, and that's part of my job.
Yeah, yeah. Well, again, on behalf of all the coaches across the state of Iowa, again, Jared, thank you all for what you do. Continue to build that relationship with us on the board, the association, and the coaches. We just appreciate you, brother. All right,
I
high school
appreciate being here.
coaches. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Jared, you'll stick around for a minute, but thank you guys. Thank you, coaches, for taking the time to listen tonight. We truly appreciate you. And again, if you need to share this with your assistant coaches, if you want to share this with maybe a coach across the state somewhere, we just again thank you for your time and taking the time to be here tonight. You can also listen to this on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Again, there'll be one more episode after this, and then we'll take a break until kickoff in August. Again, coaches, thank you again for all you do, and like we always say on the podcast, keep grinding.